The wedding march began, and Aroha felt her heart shatter into 1,000 pieces as she watched Kaia glide down the aisle in the dress that should have been hers. The worst part. Tamati stood at the altar with that same smile he'd given Aroha just 3 months ago when he'd whispered that she was his forever. But apparently, forever had an expiration date, and her sister had been the reason why. If you're already hooked and want to know how this story ends, hit that subscribe button right now, because this tale of betrayal, second chances, and an alpha king who changes everything is about to get intense. And tell me the city you're watching from so I can send you a hug, because you're going to need it after this roller coaster. Aroha Tuhair had always known her place in the Tainui pack. She was the eldest daughter, the responsible one, the wolf who followed every rule and exceeded every expectation. Her younger sister Kaia was the wild child, the beautiful chaos that their parents indulged at every turn. But none of that had prepared Aroha for this moment, standing in the third row of the Wakarwerwa pack's ceremonial grounds, forced to witness the ultimate betrayal. The scent of Pohutukawa blossoms should have been beautiful, but to Aroha they smelled like death. Her wolf whimpered inside her, a sound of pure anguish that no one else could hear. The mate bond she'd felt with Tamati hadn't been her imagination, had been real, electric, undeniable. She'd felt it snap into place 6 months ago during the summer gathering, that golden thread connecting her soul to his. Tamati Wakahau, beta of the Wakarwerwa pack, had felt it too. She knew he had. The way his eyes had darkened when they first touched, the way he'd pulled her close and breathed in her scent like it was the only air he needed. They'd spent 3 perfect months together, planning their future, talking about the pups they'd have, the life they'd build. Then Kaia had visited. Aroha's mother Mir sat beside her now, dabbing at tears that Aroha knew weren't for her eldest daughter's pain. They were tears of joy that her precious Kaia was making such an advantageous match. Never mind that Aroha had met Tamati first. Never mind the mate bond. Never mind that Aroha's heart was being carved out of her chest with every step Kaia took toward the altar. She looks so beautiful, Mir whispered, and Aroha felt bile rise in her throat. Kaia did look beautiful. She always did. With her long dark hair adorned with white feathers, her golden skin glowing in the afternoon light, and that dress, that stunning dress of traditional weaving mixed with modern elegance. Aroha had helped design that dress, back when she'd thought it would be for her own wedding. The cruelty of it all threatened to choke her. Tamati's father, the alpha of Wakarwerwa, stood beside his son with pride radiating from every pore. Rengi Wakahau had welcomed Aroha into his packhouse dozens of times over those 3 months. He'd called her daughter. He'd told her how perfect she was for his son. That was before Kaia's visit, before everything changed. Aroha could pinpoint the exact moment her life had fallen apart. It was 2 months ago, at the full moon gathering. Kaia had begged to come along, claiming she wanted to spend time with her sister. Aroha, foolish and trusting, had been happy to bring her. She'd introduced Kaia to Tamati, proud to show off both her sister and her mate to the gathered packs. And she'd watched, confused at first, then horrified, as something had sparked between them. Tamati's attention had shifted, subtle at first, then obvious. He'd started seeking out Kaia's company, laughing at her jokes, finding excuses to be near her. Aroha had confronted him, demanded to know what was happening. The mate bond was still there, she could feel it, surely he could too. But Tamati had looked at her with something like pity in his eyes and said the words that had destroyed her. The bond isn't enough, Aroha. Kaia and I, we have something more. Something stronger. I'm sorry, but she's the one I choose. As if the sacred mate bond was a preference, a selection from a menu. As if the moon goddess herself hadn't decided their fates. Aroha had run to Rengi, certain the alpha would put a stop to this madness. But he'd simply shaken his head and said that his son's happiness was paramount, and if Tamati chose Kaia, then Kaia it would be. The mate bond, he'd said, was rare but not absolute. Wolves could reject it if they found something they wanted more. Her own parents had been no better. Her father, Hemi, had actually seemed pleased that Kaia was making such a match. At least one of our daughters is securing a good future, he'd said, as if Aroha's mate bond meant nothing, as if her pain was inconsequential. Now, standing here in her simple blue dress while her sister wore white, Aroha wondered if she'd ever mattered to any of them at all. The ceremony continued, each word from the pack elder a knife to her heart. The traditional karakia, the binding words, the promises being made. Aroha's wolf howled inside her, a sound of grief so profound it made her bones ache. If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined, the elder's voice rang out. Speak now or be silent forever. Aroha's mouth opened. She wanted to scream, to tell everyone about the mate bond, about Tamati's promises, about how wrong this all was. But her voice wouldn't come. Her mother's hand clamped down on her wrist, a warning, a threat. Don't you dare, Mir hissed quietly. Don't you ruin this for your sister. The moment passed. The elder nodded, satisfied, and began the final binding words. That's when the air changed. It started as a pressure, a weight that made every wolf present straighten in their seats. Then came the scent, wild and powerful, ancient and commanding. Pine and snow and something older than the mountains themselves. Aroha's wolf, who had been whimpering in sorrow, suddenly perked up, alert and interested. A murmur ran through the crowd. Heads turned. Even Tamati and Kaia paused, looking confused. Then he appeared. The Alpha King. Aroha had heard stories of Wiremu, the wolf who ruled over all the packs of Aotearoa. He was a legend, a myth, a boogeyman that parents used to make pups behave. He was supposed to be ancient, powerful beyond measure, ruthless in his judgments. He lived somewhere in the mountains, they said, and only appeared when pack law was being violated or when something threatened the balance of their world. But the male who strode through the gathered wolves was no ancient elder. He was young, perhaps 30 in human years, though his eyes held centuries. Tall and broad-shouldered, with traditional moko covering his face and arms. His dark hair long and bound with jade. He wore the traditional garments of the Alpha King, a cloak made from kiwi feathers that marked his status, but there was nothing ceremonial about the power that rolled off him in waves. Every wolf in the gathering instinctively bowed their heads. Every wolf except Aroha, who found herself unable to look away from him. His eyes, dark and fathomless, scanned the crowd until they locked onto hers. For a moment, the entire world seemed to stop. Aroha felt something snap into place in her chest, not like the mate bond with Tamati had been. This was different, stronger, more fundamental. This was like recognizing a piece of her own soul. The Alpha King's eyes widened fractionally, the only sign that he'd felt it too. Then his gaze moved to Tamati and Kaia at the altar, and his expression hardened into something terrifying. This ceremony will not continue. His voice carried easily across the grounds, not loud but absolutely authoritative. No one would dare disobey that voice. Rengi stepped forward, his own alpha power rising but looking pitiful next to the king's. Your Majesty, with all due respect, this is a pack matter. We are honoring a chosen bond between. A chosen bond, Wiremu's voice cut through Rengi's words like a blade. Built on the rejection of a true mate bond. Did you think I wouldn't sense it? Did you think the moon goddess herself wouldn't send me to witness this abomination? The word hung in the air like thunder. Aroha felt her mother's grip on her wrist loosen in shock. Wiremu walked toward the altar with measured steps, and Aroha watched as Tamati actually stepped back, fear evident in his eyes. Kaia, for once, seemed at a loss for words, her usual confidence crumbling under the Alpha King's gaze. The mate bond is sacred, Wiremu said, his voice carrying to every corner of the grounds. It is a gift from the moon goddess herself, not a suggestion to be ignored when something prettier comes along. Tamati Wakahau, you felt the bond with Aroha Tuhair. You acknowledged it. You accepted it. Then you rejected it for her sister. Is this true? Tamati's face had gone pale. Yes, but. There is no but. Wiremu's power flared, making several younger wolves whimper. You cannot choose to reject a mate bond simply because you prefer another. That is not how our laws work. That is not how the goddess's gifts work. He turned to face the gathered crowd, his gaze eventually finding Aroha again. Aroha Tuhair, come forward. Aroha's legs moved before her mind could process the command. She walked down the aisle, past the shocked faces of pack members, past her parents who looked horrified, past Kaia who stared at her with something that might have been fear. She stopped a respectful distance from the Alpha King, her head bowed. "Look at me," he said, his voice softer now but no less commanding. She raised her eyes to his and felt that connection again, that soul-deep recognition. His expression softened fractionally. "You feel the bond with him still?" It wasn't a question. "Yes, Your Majesty." Her voice came out stronger than she expected. "And he rejected you for your sister?" "Yes, Your Majesty." Wiremu turned back to Tamati, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "The punishment for rejecting a true mate without just cause is severe. You know this law, Rengi Wakahau, even if you chose to ignore it for your son's happiness." Rengi's face had gone ashen. "Your Majesty, please, he's young, he made a mistake. A mistake that would have resulted in a false bond being sanctified, in the goddess's laws being spat upon, in an innocent wolf being forced to watch her mate marry another." Wiremu's voice was ice. "No. This ends now." He raised his hand, and Aroha felt the power gather in the air. "By my authority as Alpha King, granted by the moon goddess herself, I declare this ceremony null and void. Tamati Wakahau, you are stripped of your position as Beta. You will spend the next year in service to the pack as an Omega, learning humility and the true meaning of the bonds you so carelessly discarded." Tamati made a sound of anguish, but he couldn't move, held in place by the king's power. "Kaia Tuhair." Wiremu's gaze moved to Aroha's sister, who actually trembled under his attention. "You knowingly interfered with a mate bond, seduced your sister's intended, and showed no remorse. You are banished from the Walker Werwa pack lands. You may return to your birth pack, where your alpha will decide your punishment." Kaia's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks, but she didn't dare speak. "Rengi Wakahau, for allowing this farce to proceed, for ignoring sacred law for your son's preference, you are fined and your pack will undergo a review of its practices. If I find more evidence of such disregard for our most sacred laws, your position as alpha will be forfeit." Rengi bowed his head in submission, having no choice but to accept the judgment. Finally, Wiremu turned back to Aroha, and his expression gentled. "Aroha Tuhair, you have been wronged by your mate, your sister, your pack, and your family. The mate bond you felt was real, but it is now broken beyond repair by Tamati's rejection and choices. You are released from it, freed to find your true path." Aroha felt the golden thread that had bound her to Tamati snap completely. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. She swayed slightly, and Wiremu's hand shot out to steady her, his touch sending sparks of electricity through her skin. That's when she felt it fully. The new bond forming between her and the Alpha King himself. Impossible, incredible, undeniable. His eyes widened, and she knew he felt it too. The true mate bond, stronger and purer than anything she'd felt with Tamati. The goddess's sense of irony, perhaps, or her justice. Aroha had lost one mate only to discover another, one infinitely more powerful and suited to her. "It seems," Wiremu said quietly, his voice for her alone even though everyone watched, "that the goddess has plans neither of us expected." Aroha couldn't speak, overwhelmed by the rapid shift in her reality. An hour ago, she'd been preparing to watch her heart break permanently. Now she stood before the Alpha King, connected to him by a bond that thrummed with rightness. "We will speak more," he said, still holding her arm gently. "But first, this gathering must be dismissed, and these punishments must be carried out." He released her and turned back to address the crowd. "Let this be a lesson to all packs under my rule. The mate bond is sacred. It is not to be rejected without just cause, not to be interfered with for personal gain, not to be dismissed because it's inconvenient. The moon goddess chooses our mates with purpose, and to deny that is to deny her wisdom. Go now, and remember what you've witnessed here today." The dismissal was clear. Wolves began to disperse, whispers and shocked conversations filling the air. Aroha stood frozen, unsure what to do or where to go. Her parents approached hesitantly. Mir looked furious but didn't dare speak against the Alpha King's judgment. Hemi looked ashamed, perhaps finally understanding the magnitude of what had been done to his eldest daughter. "Aroha," her father began, but Wiremu stepped between them, a silent wall of protection. "Your daughter has suffered enough at your family's hands," the Alpha King said coldly. "You allowed one child to destroy the happiness of another. You prioritized preference over sacred law. If you have anything to say to Aroha, it can wait until she decides she wants to hear it." Hemi bowed his head and retreated, pulling Mir with him despite her protests. Kaia was being escorted away by pack guards, still crying, her beautiful dress now seeming like a mockery. Tamati had been taken to begin his year of service, his father following with shoulders slumped in defeat and shame. Finally, it was just Aroha and Wiremu standing in the ceremonial grounds, surrounded by the remnants of a wedding that never was. "You're in shock," he observed, his voice gentle now that they were alone. "I don't understand," Aroha managed. "Any of this. Why you're here. Why you intervened. Why I feel." She trailed off, unable to articulate the bond thrumming between them. "I was nearby when I felt a disturbance in the pack bonds," Wiremu explained. "A wrongness that needed to be addressed. I didn't know what I would find, but I knew I had to come. When I arrived and saw you, felt what had been done to you, I knew the goddess herself had guided me here. And the bond," Aroha whispered, "between us is real," he confirmed, his dark eyes holding hers. "As real as any I've ever felt. The goddess works in mysterious ways, Aroha. You were meant to be here, meant to experience this pain, so that we could find each other." "That seems cruel," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Perhaps," he agreed. "Or perhaps necessary. Would you have believed you deserved an Alpha King if you hadn't first been rejected by a Beta? Would you have been ready to accept a bond this powerful if you hadn't first experienced one that could be broken?" Aroha considered his words. There was truth in them, painful as it was to admit. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "I don't know how to be the mate of an Alpha King. I'm just a pack wolf from Tainui. I'm nothing special." "You're everything special," Wiremu corrected gently. "You're strong enough to stand in that crowd and watch your sister marry your mate without causing a scene. You're loyal enough to have honored a bond even when it brought you only pain. You're brave enough to speak to me honestly right now, when most wolves can barely meet my eyes. The goddess doesn't make mistakes, Aroha. If she chose you for me, then you are exactly what I need." His words warmed something in her chest, began to heal the wounds that had been carved so recently. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Wiremu said, extending his hand to her. "You come with me. I'll take you to my home in the mountains. Give you time to heal, to process everything that's happened. We'll take this as slowly as you need. The bond between us is patient. It's waited centuries for us to find each other. It can wait a little longer for you to be ready." Aroha looked at his outstretched hand, then back at the ceremonial grounds where her old life had just ended. She thought about her sister, her former mate, her parents who had failed her so completely. She thought about the wolf she'd been an hour ago, broken and diminished, forced to witness her own heartbreak. Then she thought about the wolf she could become, the mate of an Alpha King, strong, respected, protected, free from the family who had never valued her, free from the pack that had allowed her to be treated so poorly. The goddess had given her a second chance, a better chance, a chance at true happiness with a mate who already looked at her like she was precious. She placed her hand in his. "Okay," she said simply. The smile that crossed Wiremu's face was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. He pulled her gently closer, and she felt the bond between them sing with rightness. "We should go before your family tries to follow," he said, but there was no urgency in his voice, only contentment at having her close. "They won't," Aroha said with certainty. They're too afraid of you. Good, Wayarmu replied. They should be. Anyone who would hurt you should fear my wrath. The possessiveness in his voice should have been frightening, but instead, it made Aroha feel safe for the first time in months. Here was a male who would protect her, value her, never let anyone hurt her the way her family had. As they walked away from the ceremonial grounds together, Aroha felt the final chains of her old life fall away. She was no longer the eldest daughter who followed all the rules. She was no longer the rejected mate, forced to smile through her pain. She was no longer the sister who came second to Kaia's wants and needs. She was Aroha Tuhair, true mate to the Alpha King, and her story was just beginning. The journey to Wayarmu's home took them into the mountains, far from the pack land she'd known all her life. He drove them in a vehicle that seemed both ancient and incredibly well-maintained, telling her stories of the packs he oversaw, the laws he enforced, the balance he maintained. Do you ever get lonely? Aroha asked as they climbed higher into the ranges. Living apart from the packs, only appearing when there's trouble. I did, Wayarmu admitted. For a very long time. But it's the burden of being Alpha King. I must remain impartial, above the politics and squabbles of individual packs. If I lived among them, if I formed attachments and friendships, my judgment would be compromised. And now, she asked, now that you've found your mate. He glanced at her, his expression warm. Now I have a reason to be less lonely. You'll be with me if you choose to accept the bond fully. Together we won't be isolated. We'll simply be complete. The house when they arrived was breathtaking. Built into the mountainside itself, a combination of traditional architecture and modern comfort. Large windows overlooked valleys and forests that stretched as far as the eye could see. Inside it was warm and welcoming, filled with carvings and tapestries that spoke of centuries of history. This is home, Wayarmu said, watching her reaction carefully. Or it can be, if you want it to be. Aroha walked through the space, taking it all in. There was a large kitchen, clearly used regularly. A living area with comfortable furniture and a fireplace. A library filled with books and scrolls. And everywhere, signs that a person lived here, not just existed. This wasn't a cold palace. It was a home. It's beautiful, she said honestly. I'll show you to a guest room, Wayarmu said. You'll have your own space, privacy to process everything. The bond between us is strong, but I won't rush you, Aroha. You've been through trauma today. You need time to heal. His consideration touched her deeply. Despite the mate bond, despite his obvious power and ability to command, he was giving her choice, giving her space. It was more than Tamati had ever done, more than her family had ever offered. The guest room was lovely, with its own bathroom and a balcony that overlooked the forest. Aroha stood on that balcony as the sun began to set, watching the play of light through the trees, and felt something shift inside her. The grief was still there, the betrayal still stung, but underneath it all was hope. A fragile, growing hope that maybe the goddess had known what she was doing all along. A knock on her door made her turn. Wayarmu stood there with a tray of food, concern evident in his eyes. You should eat, he said. I imagine you haven't had much appetite today. He was right. She'd been too nauseous with anxiety to eat anything before the ceremony. Now, surprisingly, she found she was hungry. They ate together on her balcony, and he told her more about his life, his responsibilities, the loneliness of being Alpha King. I've waited a long time for you, he said as the stars began to appear. I'd almost given up hope that the goddess would grant me a mate. The years stretch long when you're immortal and alone. Immortal? Aroha asked, startled. He nodded. The Alpha King doesn't age like other wolves. I'm over 300 years old, Aroha. I've seen packs rise and fall, laws written and rewritten, the world change in ways I never imagined. And through it all, I've been alone, waiting for the one wolf who could stand beside me. And you think I can do that? She asked, doubt creeping in. I couldn't even keep a beta interested in me. That wasn't your failing, Wiremu said firmly. That was his. He was too blind to see what he had, too weak to honor the bond the goddess gave him. But his loss is my gain, and I will never make the same mistake. Every day for the rest of our lives, I will show you that you are valued, cherished, and worthy of all the love I can give. Tears spilled down Aroha's cheeks, the emotions of the day finally overwhelming her. Wiremu moved closer, pulling her into his arms, and she sobbed against his chest, releasing all the pain, betrayal, and grief she'd been holding. He held her through it all, stroking her hair, murmuring words of comfort in trio that soothed her wolf even as they healed her heart. When the tears finally subsided, she felt lighter, cleansed, ready to begin again. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest. "For what?" "For saving me. For seeing me. For being exactly what I needed when I needed it most." "The goddess's timing is perfect," Wiremu said. "Even when it doesn't feel like it." They stayed like that on the balcony as the night deepened, and Aroha felt the mate bond between them strengthen with every shared breath. This was different from what she'd felt with Tamati. This was deeper, truer, unbreakable. This was what the mate bond was supposed to feel like. Over the following weeks, Aroha settled into her new life. Wiremu was patient, giving her space to heal while also slowly courting her, showing her that she was cherished. They walked through the forests together. He taught her about the history of their people. She shared her dreams and fears. The bond between them grew stronger each day, and Aroha found herself falling in love with the male the goddess had chosen for her. Her family tried to contact her several times. Her mother sent letters full of recriminations and demands that she return home. Her father sent apologies that felt hollow. Kaia sent nothing, banished and shamed as she was. Aroha burned the letters without reading most of them. That part of her life was over. Tamati, she heard through Wiremu's network, was learning humility in his Omega service. Word was that the experience was changing him, making him understand the value of bonds and loyalty in ways he never had before. Aroha found she didn't care. He was her past. Wiremu was her future. 2 months after the interrupted wedding, Aroha finally accepted the mate bond fully. They completed the ceremony privately, just the two of them under the full moon, with only the goddess as witness. The bond that snapped into place was more powerful than anything Aroha had ever imagined, connecting them on every level, soul to soul, heart to heart. That night, as they lay together in Wiremu's large bed that was now their bed, Aroha finally felt complete. "I never thought I'd be grateful for that day," she admitted, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "The day I watched my sister try to marry my mate. But if it hadn't happened, I never would have found you. The goddess works in mysterious ways." Wiremu repeated his words from that first day. "She had to break you free from the wrong bond so you could accept the right one." "Do you think Tamati and I were ever truly mates?" Aroha asked. "Or was it always meant to be you?" "I think," Wiremu said thoughtfully, "that sometimes the goddess gives us practice bonds. Connections that feel real but are really just preparing us for the true bond to come. Tamati was your teacher, showing you what you didn't want, what you deserved better than. I am your destiny, the mate your soul has been searching for across lifetimes." "That's very poetic for an alpha king," Aroha teased gently. "I've had 300 years to practice my romantic speeches," he replied with a smile in his voice. "I'm glad I finally have someone to use them on." They fell asleep tangled together, the mate bond humming contentedly between them, and Aroha dreamed of the future they would build. As Alpha King's mate, she would have responsibilities, would help maintain the balance between packs, would be a voice for wolves who needed advocacy. It was more than she'd ever imagined for herself, but with Wiremu beside her, she knew she could handle anything. 6 months later, Aroha stood beside Wiremu at a gathering of all the major packs. She wore traditional dress now, marking her status as the Alpha King's mate, and she stood tall and proud. She'd grown into her role, found her voice, discovered that she was far stronger than she'd ever given herself credit for. Her parents were in the crowd, looking older and diminished. Kaia was notably absent, having chosen to leave Aotearoa entirely rather than face the shame of what she'd done. Tamati was there, having completed his year of Omega service, looking humbled and changed. When their eyes met across the gathering, he bowed his head in acknowledgement and respect, and Aroha felt nothing but peace. Rengi approached them during a break in the proceedings, his manner respectful and apologetic. "Your Majesty Aroha," he addressed them both formally. "I wanted to apologize again for what transpired. The review of our pack has been completed, and we've implemented new protocols to ensure such disrespect of mate bonds never happens again." "See that it doesn't," Wiremu said, but his tone was less harsh than it might have been. "The laws exist for a reason, Rengi. They protect our most sacred gifts." After Rengi retreated, Aroha leaned into Wiremu's side. "Do you think he's learned his lesson?" "I think he's learned that the consequences of ignoring sacred law are severe," Wiremu replied. "Whether that translates to true understanding remains to be seen. But we'll be watching." "We," Aroha repeated, liking the sound of it. "We," Wiremu confirmed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You're not just my mate, Aroha. You're my partner in all things. The pack's answer to both of us now." It was a responsibility Aroha had grown into, and she wore it well. She'd started programs for young wolves who felt lost or undervalued in their packs. She'd advocated for stronger protections around mate bonds. She'd become a voice for those who had none, using her own experience to help others. The wolf who had stood in that crowd 6 months ago, broken and diminished, was gone. In her place stood the Alpha King's mate, strong, confident, and finally happy. As the gathering continued and Aroha mingled with wolves from across the land, she caught sight of a young female who looked lost and afraid. Something about her reminded Aroha of herself, and she made her way over. "Are you all right?" Aroha asked gently. The young wolf looked up, startled to be addressed by the Alpha King's mate. Yes, I'm just... My mate rejected me, and I'm not sure what to do." Aroha's heart clenched in sympathy. She knew that pain intimately. "Come with me," she said, leading the young wolf to a quieter area. "Tell me what happened." As the girl poured out her story of rejection and heartbreak, Aroha offered comfort and advice, shared her own experience, and assured her that the pain wouldn't last forever. She connected the girl with resources, promised to look into her situation, and made sure she didn't leave feeling alone. Wiremu watched from across the grounds, pride evident in his expression. This was who Aroha was meant to be, not just his mate, but a force for good in their world, a protector of the vulnerable, a champion for those who'd been hurt as she had been. That evening, as they returned to their mountain home, Wiremu pulled Aroha close. "You were magnificent today," he said. "I was just helping someone who needed it," Aroha replied. "Exactly," Wiremu said. "You took your pain and turned it into purpose. That's the mark of a true leader, Aroha. That's why the goddess chose you for me." "I think she chose us for each other," Aroha corrected. "You've healed me as much as I've apparently helped you." They stood together on their balcony, looking out over the forests and valleys that stretched below, and Aroha marveled at how much her life had changed. A year ago, she'd been nobody special, just an eldest daughter following all the rules. 6 months ago, she'd been broken, forced to watch her dreams crumble. Now she was the Alpha King's mate, a leader in her own right, finally living the life she was meant to live. "Do you have any regrets?" Wiremu asked quietly. Aroha considered the question seriously. Did she regret the pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak? In the moment, it had been unbearable. But it had led her here, to this male, to this life, to this purpose. "No," she said finally. "No regrets. Everything that happened was necessary to bring me to you. I wouldn't change any of it. Even Kaia's betrayal. Especially that," Aroha said firmly. "Because it showed me who truly valued me and who didn't. It freed me from a family that never appreciated me. It broke a bond that was never as strong as this one. And it brought the Alpha King to interrupt a wedding and change my life forever. Wiremu laughed, the sound rich and warm. When you put it that way, I suppose I should thank your sister for her betrayal. Let's not go that far, Aroha said with a smile. But I can acknowledge that her worst behavior led to my greatest blessing. They went inside as the stars appeared, and Aroha felt complete in a way she never had before. The goddess's plan had been painful but perfect. She'd been forced to watch her sister marry her mate, but the Alpha King had interrupted the vows, and in doing so, had given Aroha everything she'd ever truly needed. The story of that interrupted wedding became legend among the packs. It was told as a cautionary tale about respecting mate bonds, about the consequences of rejection, about the Alpha King's justice. But for Aroha, it was simply the beginning of her real life, the moment when everything changed, when she stopped being who others expected her to be and became who she was always meant to be. And every time she told the story to young wolves who came seeking advice, she ended it the same way. Sometimes the goddess breaks us so she can rebuild us into something stronger. Trust her timing even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Because on the other side of that pain is everything you ever dreamed of and more. Aroha's influence grew throughout the packs. She and Wiremu worked together to strengthen the laws protecting mate bonds, creating a tribunal specifically for cases where wolves felt wronged by their mates or families. She became known as the Advocate Queen, a title she wore with pride, knowing it came from helping others avoid the pain she'd once endured. 3 years after that fateful interrupted wedding, Aroha discovered she was pregnant. The news filled their mountain home with joy, and Wiremu was impossibly tender, treating her like she was made of glass even though she insisted she was still perfectly capable. "I'm having a pup, not dying," she told him one morning when he tried to carry her down the stairs. "You're carrying the future Alpha King or Queen," he replied seriously. "That makes you the most precious thing in all of Aotearoa." "I was already precious to you," Aroha teased. "More precious then," he amended, finally setting her down but keeping a protective hand at her back. The pregnancy was announced at the next gathering, and the celebration was genuine and widespread. But what touched Aroha most was when that same young wolf she'd helped years ago approached with tears in her eyes. "You gave me hope when I had none," the girl said. "You showed me that rejection wasn't the end. I've since found my true mate, and we're expecting our first pup too. I wanted to thank you for saving me that day." Aroha embraced her, feeling the full circle of healing. She'd been saved so she could save others. She'd been broken so she could help mend those who were breaking. The goddess's plan was evident in every life she touched. Her parents attended the gathering, though they kept their distance. Mir had never truly forgiven Aroha for abandoning the family, as she called it, though everyone knew the truth. Hemi had tried to rebuild their relationship through letters that Aroha occasionally responded to, but the warmth they'd once shared was gone, replaced by polite formality. It was Tamati's approach, however, that surprised her most. He looked different now, humbled by his year of service and the years that followed. He'd never taken another mate, instead dedicating himself to serving his pack in ways that honored the bonds he'd once disrespected. "Aroha," he said, bowing deeply. "Your Majesty, I wanted to offer my congratulations on your news." "Thank you, Tamati," Aroha replied, her voice neutral but not unkind. "I also wanted to say," he continued, and she could see how much this cost him, "that I was a fool. I rejected the goddess's gift because I was young and stupid and thought I knew better than ancient wisdom. I hurt you, dishonored my pack, and lost the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm glad you found happiness, even though I don't deserve to be." Aroha studied him for a long moment. The male before her bore little resemblance to the arrogant beta who had rejected her for her sister. Pain and humility had carved away his ego, leaving someone who finally understood the value of what he'd thrown away. "I forgive you," she said simply, and watched his eyes widen in shock. "Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry anger anymore. You taught me what I didn't want, Tamati. In a strange way, you prepared me for what I did want. So I forgive you, and I hope you find peace." Wiremu's hand found hers, a silent show of support for her words. Tamati bowed again, deeper this time, and walked away. Aroha knew he'd carry the regret of his choices for the rest of his life, but that was no longer her burden to bear. 6 months later, Aroha gave birth to a daughter. They named her Atawa, meaning beautiful, because she was the most beautiful thing either of them had ever seen. She had Wairemu's dark eyes and Aroha's gentle spirit, and from the moment she was born, it was clear she would be powerful. "She'll be a great alpha queen one day," Wairemu said, holding his daughter with infinite gentleness. "With your compassion and my strength, she'll be exactly what our people need. Let's not rush her into leadership," Aroha laughed. "She's only a few hours old." But as she watched Wairemu with their daughter, Aroha felt a completeness she'd never imagined possible. This family, this life, this love. It was everything she'd been denied 3 years ago when she stood in that crowd watching Kaia walk down the aisle. The goddess had taken away one future to give her a better one. News of Kaia reached them occasionally through various channels. She'd settled in Australia, working in a human city, having abandoned pack life entirely. Some said she'd found happiness there, others that she was still running from her shame. Aroha hoped, for her sister's sake, that she'd found peace, but she had no desire to reconnect. That bridge had been burned beyond repair. As Atawa grew, she became a bridge between her parents and the packs in ways neither had anticipated. Wolves who might have been intimidated by the Alpha King softened around his daughter. Young pups saw in Atawa a future they could aspire to. And Aroha, watching her daughter play with children from various packs at gatherings, saw hope for a future where bonds were honored and pain like hers became rarer. On Atawa's 3rd birthday, Aroha stood in the same ceremonial grounds where her life had changed. They were there for a different ceremony now, the blessing of a newly formed pack. But as she looked around, Aroha couldn't help but remember that day. The pain, the betrayal, the moment the Alpha King had walked in and changed everything. "What are you thinking about?" Wairemu asked, coming to stand beside her while Atawa played nearby with other children. "About how this place was where my old life ended," Aroha said. "I stood right there in that 3rd row dying inside. And then you appeared. And now I'm grateful," Aroha said honestly. "For all of it. The pain, the betrayal, even Kaia's cruelty. Because it brought me here, to you, to our daughter, to this life. I wouldn't change a single moment." Wairemu pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "The goddess's timing is perfect. Even when it hurts," Aroha agreed, completing the phrase they'd said to each other countless times over the years. That evening, as they prepared to return home, a young female wolf approached Aroha hesitantly. She looked familiar, and it took Aroha a moment to place her, one of Kaia's friends from years ago. "Your Majesty," the girl said nervously. "I wanted to apologize. I knew what Kaia was doing, knew she was interfering with your mate bond, and I didn't stop her. I didn't say anything. I've regretted it ever since." Aroha studied her, seeing genuine remorse in her eyes. "What's your name?" "Hein," the girl replied. "Hein, I appreciate your apology. But tell me, why are you offering it now, 3 years later?" Hein's eyes filled with tears. "Because the same thing just happened to me. My sister interfered with my mate bond, and no one stopped her, just like I didn't stop Kaia. I'm about to watch her marry the male I love, and I finally understand what I helped do to you." Aroha's heart clenched. The cycle was repeating. She looked at Wairemu, who nodded slightly, understanding what she needed to do. "When is the ceremony?" Aroha asked. "Tomorrow afternoon," Hein whispered. "Then I'll be there," Aroha said firmly. "And this time it won't proceed. You have my word." Hein looked stunned. "You'd do that for me? After what I did to you?" "I do that because no one should have to suffer what I suffered," Aroha replied. "That's what I learned from my pain, Hein, that I can use it to protect others. Now tell me everything." They spent the next hour going over the details. Hein's situation was eerily similar to Aroha's had been. A true mate bond, a sister's interference, a family that prioritized one daughter over the other. But this time, Aroha had the power to stop it before the ceremony completed. The next afternoon, Aroha and Wiremu arrived at the smaller pack's ceremonial grounds. The Alpha there, a young male named Riwai, paled when he saw the Alpha King but maintained his composure. "Your Majesty," Riwai said, bowing. "We weren't expecting you." "I've come to witness this ceremony," Wiremu said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. "I trust there will be no issues with our attendance." "Of course not," Riwai said quickly, though confusion was evident in his eyes. They took seats near the back, and Aroha watched as the gathering filled with wolves. She spotted Hein sitting with her family, looking miserable. The groom stood at the altar, fidgeting nervously. And then the bride appeared, Hein's sister, looking triumphant in a way that made Aroha's blood boil. The ceremony began with the traditional karakia, the binding words. Aroha waited, watching, letting it proceed to the exact same point where Wiremu had interrupted her ceremony years ago. "If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined, speak now or be silent forever." Aroha stood. Every head in the gathering turned to her. "I have reason," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the grounds. "This male is the true mate of Hein, sister to the bride. The bond between them is sacred and recognized by the moon goddess herself. This ceremony is built on betrayal and interference with a mate bond, and it cannot be allowed to proceed." Chaos erupted. The bride's face went white, then red with rage. Hein's parents tried to speak, but Wiremu's power filled the air, silencing them all. "Is this true?" Riwai demanded, looking at the groom. The male, caught in a web of his own making, couldn't lie. Yes, I felt the bond with Hein first. But her sister was more." He trailed off, unable to finish. "More what?" Aroha asked coldly. "More beautiful, more charming, more willing to ignore sacred law for her own desires. None of those are reasons to reject a mate bond." She walked forward, her presence as the Alpha King's mate giving her authority that none could deny. "Hein, come here." Hein stood on shaking legs and made her way to Aroha's side. "Do you feel the mate bond with this male?" Aroha asked, though she already knew the answer. "Yes," Hein whispered. Aroha turned to the groom. "And you felt it with her first?" "Yes," he admitted, looking ashamed now. "Then this ceremony is declared null and void," Aroha announced. "The mate bond between Hein and—" She paused, looking at him expectantly. "Tama," he supplied quietly. "The mate bond between Hein and Tama is recognized and will be honored. Anyone who attempts to interfere with it again will answer to the Alpha King himself." The bride, Hein's sister, finally found her voice. "You can't do this. This is our ceremony. Our pack." "I can and I have," Aroha replied calmly. "I once stood where your sister stands now, forced to watch my own sister marry my mate. I know the pain you're causing her, and I will not allow it to happen to another wolf. Not when I have the power to stop it." Wiremu stood, and his presence alone was enough to end any further protests. "Alpha Riwai, you will ensure this judgment is honored. The ceremony between Tama and Hein's sister is dissolved. The bond between Tama and Hein will be properly recognized and celebrated." Riwai bowed deeply. "Yes, Your Majesty. It will be done." As they prepared to leave, Hein gripped Aroha's hand. "Thank you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for saving me." "Thank the goddess," Aroha replied gently. "She brought me through my pain so I could prevent yours. Honor the bond she's given you, Hein. And if you ever have the chance, help another wolf the way I've helped you." The ride home was quiet, Atawa sleeping in the back seat, until Wiremu finally spoke. "You were magnificent." "I was terrified," Aroha admitted. "My heart was racing the entire time." "You showed no fear," Wiremu said. "You stood up for what was right, used your own pain to protect someone else. That's true strength, Aroha." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I kept thinking about how different my life would be if someone had done that for me. If someone had stood up and stopped Tamati's ceremony before it was too late. But no one did, and you suffered, Wayarmu said softly. And from that suffering came wisdom, came compassion, came the strength to ensure others don't suffer the same way. The goddess works in mysterious ways. You say that a lot, Aroha smiled. Because it's true, he replied. Look at us. Look at our daughter. Look at the life we've built. All of it came from that terrible day when you stood in a crowd and watched your world crumble. The goddess broke you so she could remake you into someone stronger, someone who could stand beside an alpha king and help him protect the vulnerable. They arrived home as the sun was setting, the mountains painted in shades of gold and purple. Wayarmu carried a sleeping Atawa inside while Aroha stood for a moment on their balcony, looking out over the land they protected. 6 years ago she'd been nobody special. 3 years ago she'd been broken and betrayed. Now she was the Alpha King's mate, the mother of the future Alpha Queen, and the protector of wolves who needed someone to fight for them. The goddess's timing was indeed perfect, even when it hurt. Over the following years, Aroha's intervention at Hein's near wedding became another legend. Wolves began to understand that mate bonds would be protected, that interference would not be tolerated, that the Alpha King's mate herself would appear to defend the vulnerable. The number of mate bond rejections dropped dramatically across all the packs. Hein and Tama completed their mating ceremony a month after Aroha's intervention, and they sent a beautiful carving as a gift, along with a note that simply said, "You saved us. We'll never forget." Aroha placed the carving in a place of honor in their home, a reminder of why her pain had been necessary, why the goddess's plan had been perfect even when it felt cruel. Atawa grew into a spirited child who showed early signs of her father's power and her mother's compassion. She was fascinated by the stories of how her parents had met, and Aroha never shied away from telling her the truth, even the painful parts. Mama was watching Aunt Kaia marry someone? Atawa asked when she was 5, trying to understand the complex story. Yes, darling, Aroha confirmed. Someone I thought was my mate. But he wasn't, not really. Because Papa is your real mate, Atawa declared with the certainty of childhood. Exactly, Aroha smiled. Papa is my true mate. The goddess knew it, even when I didn't. What happened to Aunt Kaia? Atawa asked. And Aroha was surprised the question had taken this long to come. She made some bad choices, Aroha said carefully. She hurt people, including me. So she had to go away. Do you miss her? Aroha considered the question honestly. Did she miss her sister? I miss who I thought she was, Aroha said finally. But the real Kaia, the one who could hurt me like she did, I don't miss that person. If I had a sister, I'd never hurt her, Atawa declared fiercely. I hope you never do, my love, Aroha said, pulling her daughter close. I hope you always protect the people you love, and that they protect you in return. As Atawa grew older, she began to accompany her parents to pack gatherings, learning the responsibilities she would one day inherit. She was a natural leader, commanding respect despite her young age, showing mercy to those who deserved it and strength against those who would break the laws. On Atawa's 10th birthday, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived, sent through various channels to maintain anonymity, but Aroha recognized the handwriting immediately. Kaia. She stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it, Wayarmu standing supportively beside her. The letter was surprisingly brief. Aroha, I know I have no right to contact you. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Truly deeply sorry. I was selfish and cruel, and I destroyed something beautiful because I wanted it for myself. I heard about your daughter, about your life as the Alpha King's mate, about the good you're doing for packs across the land. I'm proud of you, even though I don't deserve to be. I'm glad you found happiness, even though I did everything I could to destroy it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a response. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry, and that I hope one day I can be even a fraction of the person you've become. Your sister, Kaia. Aroha read the letter 3 times, feeling emotions she thought she'd long buried rising to the surface. Anger, hurt, betrayal, but also something unexpected. Pity. What will you do? Warmu asked gently. I don't know, Aroha admitted. Part of me wants to burn this letter and forget she exists. But another part remembers that we were close once. That she was my little sister before she became my enemy. You don't have to decide now, Warmu said. Take your time. Process it. And whatever you decide, I'll support you. Aroha tucked the letter away. Not ready to respond, but not ready to destroy it either. Some wounds took longer to heal than others. Months passed, and the letter remained unanswered. Aroha focused on her work, on her family, on continuing to protect mate bonds across the packs. But the letter lingered in the back of her mind, a question she wasn't ready to answer. Then, a year after receiving Kaia's letter, Aroha had a dream. In it, the moon goddess herself appeared, radiant and terrible in her beauty. My child, the goddess said, you have learned the lessons I needed you to learn. You have turned your pain into purpose, your suffering into strength. But there is one final lesson. What lesson? Aroha asked in the dream. Forgiveness, the goddess replied. Not for her sake, but for yours. Carrying anger and hurt only poisons your own spirit. You don't have to forget what she did. You don't have to rebuild the relationship. But you must forgive, truly forgive, so that you can be fully free. Aroha woke with tears on her cheeks and Warmu already awake beside her, somehow sensing her distress. I dreamed of the goddess, she whispered. What did she say? That I need to forgive Kaia. Really forgive her. Warmu held her close. Do you think you can? I don't know, Aroha admitted. But if the goddess herself is telling me to, I have to try. It took another month before Aroha could bring herself to write a response. It was shorter than Kaia's letter had been. Kaia, I received your letter. Your apology is acknowledged. I forgive you not because you've earned it, but because I refuse to carry anger anymore. This doesn't mean our relationship is restored. Too much has been broken for that. But I release you from the burden of my resentment, and I release myself from the burden of carrying it. I hope you've found peace in your new life. May the goddess guide your path. Aroha. Sending the letter felt like releasing a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. Warmu watched her post it and then pulled her into his arms. How do you feel? He asked. Lighter, Aroha said wonderingly. I actually feel lighter. The goddess knows what we need, Warmu said. Even when we don't. They never heard from Kaia again, but Aroha was at peace with that. She'd done what the goddess asked, released the anger and resentment, and freed herself from the final chains of that terrible day 6 years ago. Atawa continued to grow, strong and wise beyond her years. On her 16th birthday, she asked her parents to tell her the complete story of how they met, including all the painful parts they'd softened when she was younger. They sat together on their balcony, the place where so many important conversations had happened over the years, and Aroha told her daughter everything. The mate bond with Tamati, Kaia's betrayal, the forced attendance at the wedding, Warmu's intervention, the bond that had formed between them. That's terrible, Atawa said when Aroha finished, her eyes bright with unshed tears. How did you survive it? I didn't have a choice, Aroha said honestly. But more than that, I had hope. Even in my darkest moment, some part of me believed the goddess had a plan. And she did. I want to be like you, Atawa said fiercely. I want to protect wolves who are hurting, who need someone to fight for them. You will be, Warmu said, pride evident in his voice. You already are. You have your mother's compassion and my strength. You'll be an alpha queen unlike any our people have seen before. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant colors, Aroha reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak. All of it had been necessary to forge her into who she was now. She'd been forced to watch her sister marry her mate, until the Alpha King interrupted the vows. And in that interruption, in that moment when everything changed, she'd found her true destiny. The goddess's timing was perfect, even when it hurt. especially when it hurt. Because on the other side of that pain was everything Aroha had ever needed. A true mate, a powerful purpose, a beautiful daughter, and the strength to protect others from the pain she'd endured. As Wiremu took her hand and Atawa leaned against her shoulder, Aroha sent a silent prayer of gratitude to the moon goddess. Thank you for breaking me so you could remake me. Thank you for taking away what I thought I wanted so you could give me what I truly needed. Thank you for the pain that taught me compassion, for the betrayal that taught me strength, for the loss that led me to find everything. And somewhere in the mountains, Aroha could have sworn she heard the goddess's laughter, warm and knowing, as if to say, "You're welcome, my child. You're finally welcome." The story of Aroha Two-Hair, who stood in a crowd and watched her world crumble, only to have the Alpha King appear and give her a new one, would be told for generations. It would be a cautionary tale about respecting mate bonds, an inspiring story about turning pain into purpose, and a reminder that the goddess's plans, though sometimes painful, were always perfect. And Aroha, living her life in the mountains with a male who was her true destiny and the daughter who would carry their legacy forward, knew that every word of those future stories would be true. She'd been broken, betrayed, and forced to watch her own heartbreak unfold. But from those ashes had risen something far more beautiful than anything she'd lost. The goddess had taken everything from her so she could give her everything that truly mattered. And that, Aroha knew, was the real magic of the mate bond. Not that it was perfect, but that it was purposeful. Not that it was easy, but that it was worth every moment of pain it took to find it. As the stars appeared in the darkening sky, Aroha whispered one final prayer. For every wolf who stands where I once stood, heartbroken and hopeless, may they know that the goddess has not forgotten them. May they trust in her timing, even when it hurts. And may they find, as I did, that the end of one story is simply the beginning of something far more beautiful. And in the mountains of Aotearoa, the Alpha King held his mate close, their daughter safe beside them, and the future stretching out before them like a promise. One that had been forged in pain, tempered in betrayal, and ultimately fulfilled in love.